Alright, so I'm back, and today we're going to talk about the last 3 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So originally as you guys have seen, episodes 1, 2, and 3, I was doing 1 review per episode. But by the time I got to 3, there's just so little to talk about. I just don't know what... I mean, it's not worth it to do a video on each episode. I actually did a video on 4, and I spent about 4 or 5 minutes reviewing the episode, and then rambled on for a good 20 minutes on things that had nothing really to do with it. And it got to the point where I decided, okay, I'm going to delete that. We're going to move on. And I'd already watched 5 and 6, so I'm just going to do a review for 4, 5, and 6. I mean, there's just such little content in these episodes. And that is a huge problem. And I know I've said this before, with pretty much all the Disney Plus shows, but you cut out the recap, and you cut out the little intro. So that takes about 5 minutes off the beginning of the episode. And then you cut off the last, 15 minutes, which is the end credits. So you're taking about 20 minutes out of a 45-minute show. So these things become about 25 to 30 minutes long. And that means it's a very short episode. It's just... I mean, I don't know what else to say. You know, here I am. I'm watching episode 9 of Oroville. I've got it paused. I'm about 28 minutes into the episode with 49 minutes left to go. You know, it's a huge contrast of shows. Here's an episode of the Orville, like I said, that's essentially an hour and 20 minutes long without commercials, mind you. Not saying that the Ty's laying on the leg of the... Not saying that the Obi-Wan has commercials, but I'm just saying that this doesn't have commercials. It's an hour and 18 minutes of a show, as opposed to 20 minutes of a show, or, even 30 minutes of a show. And it just begs the question of, why are we putting this into a show format when we could have, 6 episodes at 30 minutes long? We're talking about a 3-hour movie. I think that, especially for a made for streaming movie, I think a 3-hour movie is very acceptable time frame. I know in theaters it shouldn't quite be that long, just because people don't want to sit there for 3 hours. But there's so much content in this show that can just easily be cut out because it's boring as shit, or doesn't make sense canon wise. That you could easily get it down to easily 2.5 hours, which seems like a pretty standard time frame for a lot of movies these days, 2 to 2.5 hours. There's no reason. So let's talk about episode 4, and then we'll talk about 5, and then we'll talk about 6. So 4 picks up where 3 left off, with Leia being captured again, this time by Reva. Is it the Inquisitor, ex-Jedi, whatever you want to call her. So she takes her to the Grand Inquisitor Palace, or whatever it's called, I don't know. And then Obi-Wan's like, oh, we gotta go save her. And we get the same plot point that we have already seen in this series before, where he's like, we gotta go save her. Oh, no. We can't do that. Oh, but she's a little girl. Oh, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. Oh, she's a princess. No, we can't do that. We can't do it. She's very important to me. No, we can't do that. Please, can we do this? No. Oh, come on. Okay, we'll do it. We've already seen this element in this show. It's like, it's just repeating itself already. And it's just like, that was just obnoxious. To go back to, the same thing that we saw in the first episode when Obi-Wan's like, no, I can't do this. Oh, come on, no, okay. It's like, we all know they're going to help. What's the point of beating around the bush? Why can't we just be like, okay, you know what? You need some help, Obi-Wan. Like, how about we flip it a little bit? And Obi-Wan's like, no, you guys shouldn't help me because it's too much of a risk for you. You really need to get everyone out. And they're like, no, we insist. We need to come help you. You need help. You may not think it, but you do. Right there. Already a better plot point. Especially when we've already done the opposite one earlier in the episode. It would be a good teaching moment and stuff for Obi-Wan. Just kind of reminder that there's still good in the galaxy. People still want to help people. Yeah. So that's one element that we had that was just like, okay, this is stupid. Then they get into they just kind of stroll into the fortress, which I was just like, all right, okay. And then he goes in. The one cool thing I would say about this episode was when Reva's trying to use her force power to extract the information from Leia and it's not working. And that realization that she's kind of having that this girl's probably force sensitive. I was like, oh, okay. But do they focus on that? No. They don't even mention it. You just kind of I kind of pieced it together from the way she was reacting, and it was like, oh, okay. That's it. It's like, it's like the one cool element about the episode. Sorry, Ty keeps knocking over the tripod. The one cool episode, or one cool thing about the episode, and they don't even focus on. And the other, I would say, was a decent attempt at a good scene. Was at the beginning when they had Obi-Wan in the little water bath thing that rejuvenates you, and they were mirroring it with Vader. It's like, that was cool. I will say that was a cool little, almost a cool scene is what I mean to say. It had potential, but it didn't quite get there. So there we go. There's those elements of the show of that episode that I thought was good. Ridiculous parts were, like I said, walking into the thing. When Obi-Wan saves Leia from the two stormtroopers, there's one stormtrooper that he's hitting with his lightsaber, and it looks like he's just beating this guy down with a baseball bat. And I cannot not sit there and think, I thought lightsabers cut through things. And then he fights the second stormtrooper and cuts him down within seconds, and just he's dead. And it's just like, okay, so it cuts that guy but not this guy. Does this one random stormtrooper that's standing guard with Leia have the Mandalorian style armor where the lightsabers can't just cut through? Seriously, I mean, go watch the scene. I mean, he is beating this guy. And it's just at one point he's swinging the lightsaber as hard as he can, hits the guy in the chest, and it just knocks him over. It doesn't cut through him. It doesn't cut through his armor. I think at the end you see a little bit of a char mark, and I'm just like, Jesus, what is with this guy's armor? And then he goes to the other guy and he's like, psst, dead. And it's like, what is going on? It just doesn't make sense. And then when he's like, okay, we gotta get them out of the fortress. So the girl puts on a trench coat and then he puts on a trench coat. And he's got Leia, and Leia's like walking side to him, so he's just got this big lump to the side, and you see her feet walking, and it's just like nobody notices this. Not one person's noticing this. It's just poor writing. And that's all there is to this episode. I mean, it is short. It's to the point. I won't call it short and sweet. It was just short, to the point, and did what it was supposed to do, which was get Leia out of their hands, and then establish that Reva has a tracker on Obi-Wan, and that's pretty much it. And that's why it's like the first time I did this episode, or did this video, I mean, there's not much to talk about there, so I just kind of like rambled on and on and on about other things, and it just at one point it just gets to a point after a while where it's just like, well, this is just not what it was supposed to be. The video, I mean. So let's go into episode 5. Now, episode 5, we've got Obi-Wan and the Rebels, or whatever you want to call them, Resistance, or Rebels, or what, who cares? They're all in this little fortress with all these people, and Empire's coming to get Obi-Wan. And then Leia's little droid was evil because of a tracker on it. Okay. And it like disabled the doors and they couldn't get out, and it just for the most part it was just another episode of you just sitting there like waiting for something to happen. And it was just, again, boring. And it shouldn't be. I mean, you look at how the siege on can't remember the name, the ice planet in Empire Strikes Back, you know, you have the rebel force with the force field, and then you got the walkers coming in, and you got the fighters fighting them, and then you've got, you know, cannons shooting up the Star Destroyers so that the transports can get away. I mean, there's so much stuff going on in that sequence, and you're sitting there like the first time you're watching, it's like, are they going to get away? Are they going to lose somebody? What's going to happen? Like, you know, all of these little fighters are going up against these Imperial walkers, and horribly outmanned, horribly outgunned, and they're doing everything they can to take some of them down, so they don't just wipe out the fortress, and they still do. They get in there and destroy the shield generator. And it's like, you know, and here we've got the stormtroopers standing outside, and then Obi-Wan and Reva having like a they're talking through the door with their hands, and it's just like, what? And then Obi-Wan's like, oh, I'll turn myself in, and that will get them to bring Vader down. And so he turns himself in, and he tells Reva in front of all the stormtroopers and other Inquisitors and stuff. He tells her the plan, like, oh, I know you really want to get back at Anakin, so I'm turning myself in so that he will come to you. And so she just sends him back into the fortress and closes the door with 2 stormtroopers. Like, what? What is going on? And it's like none of the other Imperial troops there. Not one sat there and be like, you know what? I don't think we should let the Jedi go back in the fortress and then call Vader to say, come on down. It makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, I've got nothing. I legitimately have nothing. It makes absolutely no sense. So Vader comes down and Obi-Wan gets away, of course, because why wouldn't he? You put him back in there with only 2 stormtroopers. Of course he got away. So he's getting away. Vader comes in and he uses his force power to grab the ship, pull it back down, lands it, and then he starts ripping this ship apart with the force power. Now, on the one hand, it's a cool sequence because it shows how powerful Vader is. He's just ripping through this fucking ship like it's nothing. And then you have another ship that was behind it, and that takes off, and that's where everybody was. And my problem here with this sequence is like, yes, it's cool, but it makes no sense in the canon. In the canon of itself, it doesn't make sense. Because he walks in, sees this ship taking off, and he stops it, and he's tearing it apart. Then he watches another ship start taking off, and he doesn't do anything. It gets away. So was he able to stop this first one, but not the second one? You know, and then that brings up other questions, like in Rogue One, when he's cutting through the hallway scene. You know, cool scene. And then he gets to the end of the hallway and he sees what turns out to be Leia's little escape ship getting out of there and taking off. And why didn't he use the force power there and pull that ship back in? You know, it's like, you know, why is he able to do it here, but nowhere else has he ever been able to do that? And also, you know, it goes back into an earlier episode 3 of this show, when, you know, he has defeated Obi-Wan, and that one droid picks up Obi-Wan and is running away with him, and at no point does Vader just, like, use the power to grab the droid and pick it up and pull it towards him. Like, it's just inconsistent writing and power levels. And we'll get into that in episode 6, too, because I got some serious problems in there. The only cool scene in this episode, to me, was the fight in between Reva and Vader. And what I thought was cool about it was the fact that he was basically just playing with her the entire time. You know, the first part of the fight sequence was him just using the force to throw her around and block all her attacks. And it was cool to see, you know, Vader just kind of just messing with somebody and not just like, oh, I could kill you in a second. Because he never even pulls out his own lightsaber. He uses hers, or one of hers. Like, she has one of those double-bladed spinning lightsabers, and he breaks it apart and he takes one of them and uses that to fight her. And it's also a cool sequence, to an extent, because it still doesn't make sense canon-wise, when they start fighting just with the lightsabers, that you see him being a little bit slower and clunky than he was when he was using the Force. And that kind of makes me feel a little bit better about how different he is when he's, you know, in the past versus like how fast and agile he was like in Revenge of the Sith before he lost his limbs, to, you know, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, where he's you know, fighting with the lightsaber against Luke, but he's not doing backflips and, you know, all the spinning things, and it's almost like he can't, and it's like, that's something I want to see more of. That's the kind of thing that I like, you know, where he's trying to overcome the fact that he's got robotic limbs, but he's still super powerful and he's a badass still. You know, it's like, that's the kind of thing that I want to see. But that's not something that we do see. That's just like a quick thing that I kind of, in my head canon, kind of piece together. It could just be poorly choreographed for all I know. So we have those elements. And then, let's see. And then he stabs her, and then it turns out the Grand Inquisitor's not dead, even though he was run through by a lightsaber. And it's like, okay, so lightsabers don't kill key characters, only stormtroopers. And that's if they cut into them in the first place. So this is an important part of this, of in between 5 and 6 for me, because there's a huge problem I have. They leave her in the abandoned rebel fort. All the ships are destroyed, and she's dying. They leave her there, kind of laughing at her, and they walk away. The rebels with Obi-Wan, whatever, they're flying away, and then all of Vader and them, they get back on the Star Destroyer and they start chasing them. And now we're into episode 6. So they're chasing them directly after this confrontation. This is directly after. And then Obi-Wan decides the only thing that he can do to stop it is by getting onto a little transport off of the ship, like an escape pod type thing, getting on one of those and leading Vader away. Okay, we've got a good sequence going here. That's all making sense. Meanwhile, Reva's on Tatooine chasing Luke. Where the fuck did this come from? I mean, I know she found the little communication thing, and she it says everything that she needs to know. But how did she get from random rebel base in the middle of nowhere with no ship and injured to Tatooine, interrogating people and chasing down Luke? It makes no sense at all. It's like in the episode 2, I think it was, when she sees Obi-Wan, down the way, fighting against those people trying to collect the bounty, and so she's hauling ass across the roof using force powers and backflips and stuff like that to catch up, and yet she doesn't catch up to them. She's hauling ass, and Obi-Wan's pinned down by gunfire, and then Leia falls off the roof, and he uses his force to catch her, and he slowly puts her on the ground, and by the time she's laying on the ground, he's walking around the building, and again, time frame, how the hell did he get down there that quick? And then they have a conversation with fake Jedi, and then they sneak off, and then Reva finally shows up. It's like, how far away was she, even though she was able to see what was going on? It's like she was plot device that far away. And here it's like plot device, she was able to teleport to Tatooine. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever that she's able to get there that quickly while injured with no ship. And yet everything else is moving normal time frame wise, and it's just what is going on? I don't get it. And then we get into the Obi-Wan and Vader fight. Now this fight was almost cool. Almost. I've seen it better on YouTube. And the reason for that is because you're having this epic duel. Epic. This is supposed to be, part 2 of the Revenge of the Sith fight sequence. This is it. This is the full-on fight. This is where it's going to go. There's some things that don't make sense in it, but that's okay. But what really, it's like when you just kind of turn your brain off and you're like, I don't want to think about this and that and the other thing with the show, and why it doesn't make sense. But when you shut your brain off and you just want to watch a cool action sequence, it fails because of Reva. I really hope that's her name. I hope I'm not just been saying it wrong this whole time. I don't know. But it fails because of her. Because you go from having this exciting sequence with Obi-Wan and Vader to her getting shot at by, Uncle Owen and such. And it's just so stupid. Because you've got like I said, an adrenaline pumping fight, and then slow, staggering chase sequence. It's just so stupid. Oh. And then when Obi-Wan, and we'll talk about the fight with Obi-Wan and Vader here in a second, but when Obi-Wan's done with the fight, he gets on the ship and he's back on Tatooine in no time, so that he can, find Reva right after she decided that she wasn't going to kill Luke. And it's just, again, it's one of those things where it's just like, how, in A New Hope, Luke and Obi-Wan, with C-3PO and R2-D2, enlist the help of Han Solo and Chewbacca. They get onto the Millennium Falcon. They take off from Tatooine. They're on their way to Alderaan. They get through the little blockade with those, they get through that blockade with all those stormtroopers and all that stuff. And then they go into the hyperspace, headed towards Alderaan. And it takes such a long time to travel that they put it on autopilot, and they go over there like Luke's practicing with the lightsaber and the little floating ball laser thing. They're playing chess. C-3PO and Chewbacca are playing chess to the point where Han's able to explain to him, that Wookiees tear off their arms. This takes a while to get there, even if they are traveling, X amount of speed fast or whatever. However, their little thing works. I'm no expert on Star Wars lore. All I know is that it takes time to get from point A to point B. Every other Star Wars I've ever seen takes time to get from point A to point B, but not in this episode when it doesn't need it. For example, he's able to get from the moon or wherever he was fighting Vader to Tatooine in seconds, and then he's able to get from Tatooine back to Alderaan in seconds so he can drop off the thing, and then he's able to get from there back to Tatooine in no time. And it's like, where the hell is all this coming from? This lightning speed. I don't get it. I do not get it. So if anybody out there can explain that to me, like how she's able to travel faster than the Star Destroyers, please let me know, because that just doesn't make sense to me. And it's distracting from the story when people move either slower than they should or super fast. Now for the Obi-Wan, I keep wanting to say Luke, Obi-Wan versus Vader fight. I have some serious problems with this fight. Was it a cool sequence? Yes. It's better on YouTube when they cut it so it's just the fight sequence with them, and you don't have to watch all the other stupid drama. It's a better fight sequence there. It's not, because it gets interrupted, it even takes away from it even more. I have serious problems with it because, again, power level. There's a part, first off, lightsabers, again, they're hitting these rocks, these rock mounds on this moon, and these rock mounds are crumbling like they got hit by a sledgehammer. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, I thought lightsabers would cut through it and leave just like laser burns or like a smooth cut. I thought that's how lightsabers work, but I guess they hit things with super hard impact instead. That's the first for all of Star Wars canon, but okay. Alright, back to the, lightsaber used as a beat stick for the stormtrooper. But then you got, at one point, Vader's just crumbling these rock pillars like they're nothing and throwing them at Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan's able to use the Force power to just kind of block it so that he's like kind of in a safe little bubble. And it's just like, I'm just sitting here watching it like, when have they been able to use these kind of powers? Now, one can make an argument. One can make the arguments here. One, I know when Vader's sitting on his throne on Mustafar, he's absorbing Force powers, so he's more powerful that way. Okay. But he doesn't use it in anywhere in episode 4, 5, and 6 or in Rogue One. So, and Rogue One, he was sitting in Mustafar. So it's like, is he uber powerful in Rogue One? No. Not like this. So that doesn't make sense canon-wise. But okay. He also didn't use this power when he was fighting Obi-Wan the first time. And again, you could say like, oh well, he's older now, and he knows more about the Force, and he knows more about the dark side, and he's more powerful. And it's like, okay, but then there's the problem with Obi-Wan, because later on in the same episode, same fight, he does that like where he lifts his arm up, and all those rock formations start floating, and he starts flinging those things at Vader, just like Vader was doing to him. Moments before, which then brings the point of has Obi-Wan ever had that power? Because unlike Vader, he was not using the Force this whole time. He was sitting at home, cutting himself off from the Force. And when Revenge of the Sith happened, you never see him use those kind of powers. Like, for example, when he's fighting Dooku, wouldn't it have been pretty useful to start flinging all that stuff at Dooku when he got into the room? Or how about when he fought General Grievous? And there's all those battle droids. Wouldn't it have been really useful if he went like this and all the battle droids flew up and he flung them at him? I'm just saying, wouldn't that have been really useful? A useful use of the Force? But instead, this is the only time we ever see him do this. And it just doesn't make sense in canon how he's able to wield this kind of power out of nowhere. And then the biggest problem for me in this episode, he defeats Vader. Now, it kind of makes a little sense, that he's got to beat Vader so that when they fight again in episode 4, Vader's still bitter about not being able to beat this guy. And it even makes it more of an insult that Obi-Wan's just like, fine, kill me. Go right ahead. I've made my peace. Go right ahead. And Vader does, and Vader's like, he probably has that unsatisfying ending to their conflict. But Obi-Wan defeats Vader. They have this sequence, which also there's a line in there that doesn't make sense, and that is when Obi-Wan's telling Vader, he's like, I'm sorry, I failed you, blah blah blah, and Vader says, you are not the one that killed Anakin Skywalker, I did. And, basically saying like, hey, you're not the fault for creating me. However, rewind to episode 3, when Obi-Wan first sees Vader and says, what have you become? And Vader says, I am what you made me. So it makes no sense writing-wise in the same show from one episode to the next, where here is Vader saying, it's all your fault, you did this to me, to, no, I did this. It's my bad. Yeah, it makes no sense. But what really doesn't make sense is the fact that Obi-Wan doesn't kill Vader. I've got nothing whatsoever to defend this. And there's nothing that anybody out there could say that would make me say, oh, that makes sense. Like, oh, the Jedi don't kill unarmed people, because fucking Obi-Wan's been murdering people all season. There's a whole season of episodes he's been murdering people left and right. There's one sequence, I think it was in 4, where he kills a stormtrooper off screen, and you see the stormtrooper floating face down in a pool of water. Like, really? Jedi don't kill people? Motherfuckers killed a lot of people in this this season. And throughout his career. And it's like, oh, well, war is one thing, but no, but seriously, go back and watch the stormtrooper, and remember, these aren't clone troopers either. These are stormtroopers. These are just regular people that were abducted and turned into these things. And it's like, it makes no sense why he would leave Vader, who's been killing people left and right, including children, and yet he's just like, nah, we're good. See you later. Goodbye. I've got nothing. Like I said, I've got nothing that can defend that. He should have killed Vader then. But of course, you can't, because of the whole canon. You'd throw off episode 4, 5, and 6 if you killed Vader off on a random moon. But the thing is just like, there's just nothing that can defend, like, say like, oh, well, he was so close to Anakin, in the past, and he just couldn't bring himself to kill him. And it's like, no, he even says that my friend is truly dead. And he's just looking at this monster that's been killing everybody. And then to sit there and be like, well, the Jedi shouldn't be ruled by emotions. Oh, fuck you. It's like, everything contradicts everything when it comes to why Obi-Wan doesn't kill Vader here. Vader's barely able to stand, so it's not like it would have been a fight. Obi-Wan could have just walked over them and like, a mercy killing. You call it a mercy killing. Call it the right thing to do, because he's a monster that's killed millions. And like I said, it's just like, it makes no sense. And I don't get it. It's just what I call bad writing. They write themselves into the corner, and the only way they can see themselves getting out of it is by having Obi-Wan just walk away. And right off the top of my head, I can think of a few things that would have made it different. Like, have Obi-Wan get into the smaller spaceship, flying off, and have the Star Destroyer use a tractor beam to pull it onto the Star Destroyer. And during their fight, they destroy a certain section of the ship, and it's falling apart, and now you have the defeated Vader here and Obi-Wan here with a big crevice in between, and it's slowly getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it just gets to a point where all Obi-Wan can do is get back onto his little escape ship and get out of there, because he's no longer able to get over to Vader, because Vader's like, he just can't reach him anymore. Right there you go, problem solved. And I'd be like, oh, okay, he couldn't finish off Vader because now there's there's a reason for it. There's an actual reason why he can't kill Vader. Like, he just can't. Or maybe the Inquisitors come to save him, and Obi-Wan's over there. He's hurt, because of the fight, and he's just sitting there. He's like, I can't fight all of these Inquisitors and Vader to finish him off. I can't do it alone. I can't. I've got to go. And he takes off. Something like that. That's all I would have taken. Just a slight adjustment to the script, and we would have been fine. And then we could have even had a sequence where Vader's really pissed off the Inquisitors and kills them all because they interfered with his fight. Like, live or die, he wanted to face Obi-Wan Kenobi alone, and they interfered with it, so he kills them all off, and that explains why they're not in 4, 5, and 6. There you go, problem solved. Just hit 2 birds with 1 stone right there. But no, I mean, they got to do the, well, you, my friend, is truly dead. I'm gonna go now. Bye. See you later. And then he teleports back to Tatooine and meets up with Reva, this murdering psychopath who's been on this rampage killing Jedi left and right. She decides that she's not going to kill Luke, and he's like, okay, cool. You're good. Go have a good life. Make good decisions. And it's like, again, it makes no sense not to kill these people. It's just like, he kills, like, Jedi kill people indiscriminately throughout the entire series when they're bad guys. And to let these Sith-wielding evildoers go just because of plot, it's just stupid. And then he's riding off into the sunset, and finally he sees Qui-Gon, and they start talking, and it's just like, oh, okay. I got nothing. I've got nothing. This is just awful. So for a rating for this show, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. And I know that's pretty low. But it's just like, what sequences I thought in this show that were decent were only that decent because they are contradicted by other things in canon that make them make no sense. For example, like the fight sequence between Vader and Obi-Wan. Is it a cool looking sequence? Yes. Does it suck because of canon? Yes. Does it suck because it keeps getting interrupted by this whole the Reva thing? Yes. You know, that's everything that I almost was like, okay, this is going to be great. They ruin. Everything else is either bad to boring. It's another one of those shows I will never watch again. And I don't want you guys to think that I hate the show and I hate Star Wars, but it's just like, I nothing this show. It is worthless. It's just, I mean, one can make the argument that it's great to see these characters back in these roles, and it is. It is. However, I would have rather see them back in these roles as competent villains and heroes. You know, it's like, you know, I would have rather see Hayden Christensen in Rogue One doing the Vader in Rogue One than this, because at least in there he still comes off as this badass, and here he comes off as a badass, but it's quickly contradicted by his incompetence. Like, oh, I could beat up Obi-Wan real quick and light him on fire, and I can put the fire out, but if somebody else starts the fire, I can't put the fire out. And if they pick him up and walk away with him, I can't use the Force to bring him back to me. Like, sorry, I've used my cool badassery in the town when I was killing people. I can't stop this shuttle, but I can stop that one and tear it apart. But I can't stop the one that actually I needed to stop. Because apparently my Force powers is able to allow me to know where Obi-Wan is when I'm close to him, but not close enough that I can tell which shuttle he's on. And it's like, the more I think about it, the more I talk about it, the more issues I come up with it. And it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So, again, it's not that I hate it, I nothing it. It's a worthless show. It doesn't help the canon. It doesn't help the characters. It just creates more mundane Star Wars crap that we didn't need to watch to begin with. I would say it's an easy skip. If you haven't watched it, just skip the whole thing. Go on YouTube, watch the fighting between Obi-Wan and Vader, and just pretend it's a fan-made little video, because it makes no sense canon-wise why they have these kind of powers and why Obi-Wan doesn't kill Vader. But just go watch it, because it's a good sequence of a fight. Go watch Vader versus Reva. Okay, good fight sequence. Just go watch those, pretend they have nothing to do with anything, and just enjoy them. But don't watch the show, because it's boring. It's just stupid and boring. And it's just like, a lot of people say Star Trek is boring. And I can see what they're saying. But at least they have things that make sense in their canon. And it's like, oh, the more they talk about their diplomatic relationships with the Romulans, the more it feeds to the actual story of the war between the Federation and the Romulans. And it's like, oh, okay, now by the time we get to when the sun explodes and they're looking for refugee camps and eventually end up moving back to Vulcan, it all makes sense. And it's like, wow, there's a lot of rich history here. But then you watch stuff like this for like Star Wars and you just sit there like, this is nothing. This helps nothing. It tells no story. It answers no questions. It creates more questions that it solves, and it's just poor writing. Even if you go back to Rogue One, at least that makes sense canon-wise, because it goes into the fact that the guy that engineered it all, the whole thing, had created a failsafe to destroy it remotely because he's so pissed off at the Empire for killing his wife. It makes sense. It adds to the story. It creates more. And then you go to this show or what was it? Solo. And you watch these things and it's like it adds absolutely nothing to the story. You don't need to know how Han got his blaster. It's pointless story. All of this could have been told in 5 seconds. Like, hey, remember that time when you beat the gangster and he gave him a gun because he thought you were a badass? Oh yeah. And then, okay, cool. That's all we need to know. It's like in Marvel. They keep Black Widow and Hawkeye keep mentioning Budapest, and then finally when they show the Budapest, it's like, I'd rather go back to, we are a long way from Budapest, and you're just sitting there like, I want to know. And it's like, if we never knew what happened, it would have been so much better. It's just it's like sometimes we don't need to know every little element to a story, and this, there's nothing in this that, and it's the same problem I have with like the Falcon and Winter Soldier show. Because you start off Falcon and Winter Soldier with Falcon being Captain America because Captain America gave him the shield and passed it to him. Okay? All of that makes sense. But you watch the entire show only to watch him give up the shield, somebody else get elected Captain America, then he turned evil, so Falcon had to fight him and win the shield back from him to become Captain America. So it doesn't change the narrative of the show, of the entire story. It just keeps the status quo the same. Falcon is Captain America to Falcon is Captain America. There is no change in the overall arc. There's little elements that add little bits here and there, but none of those little bits here and there are actually add to the entire story of the Avengers saga. Right? Whereas you watch this is the same way. Obi-Wan's on Tatooine looking over Luke, making sure Luke's okay, and by the end of it, he's on Tatooine watching over Luke, making sure he's okay. Leia's on Alderaan. She's still on. She began there. She ended there. Nothing changed. The only thing that changed is some of the side characters that were introduced in the show. And that's one of my biggest problems with stuff like that. If they were to add something that made sense and adds canon, to the already rich lore, that's where I want to see. Like, if they did a story on how the clones were originally created, and it was a good element, and it's like, oh, and like how, like, somehow Palpatine was able to get in there and program them with Order 66. Okay, that's something that could add on to the story. I don't know if it really would, but, I could see something like that. Something that could just add a little bit. Just a little bit. But instead we get this stuff, so that just doesn't change the narrative. So yeah, that's all I got. So what did you guys think of the show? Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Are you like me where just like, why am I watching this? Oh, that's right, because there's no figures to look at. That's all I got.